Welcome to AAON Incorporated's 21st annual meeting of stockholders. We'll be here from 10 till somewhere close to 11, no later. We're in a wonderful situation right now since the virus is finally curtailing its activity a little bit. We are going back into a more normal situation. The past couple of years have been a little tumultuous for us as they have for everybody else. And now I think we'll be able to talk about where we're going and be reasonably comfortable in thinking we're not going to have some unusual situation change it. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the President and CEO, Jerry Fields.
Good morning. Thank you for attending. So, first thing I'd like to talk about is 2020 performance. So I want to start with page 16 of the annual report, comparison of 5-year cumulative total returns. Now, Jim Collins, in his book, Good to Great, describes great companies in reference to how they performed in relation to the general market. So those companies that perform better than the general market or their industry peers are considered noteworthy. If you'll observe this, the purple line is AAON stock performance over the last 5 years. You'll see that we are much better than NASDAQ at every data point. We are better than our peer group at every data point. 2018 was the first time that we dipped close to our peer group. So in the transitional years, from Norm to myself, it's very expected that there's going to be some struggles and difficulties with maintaining those efficiencies when you're converting a company from the founder and entrepreneurial's method, along with his group of people that many of which retired, and you're bringing up a younger group that has a more collaborative approach and a more, we'll say, business standard approach, not so reliant on individuals and their individual contribution, but more reliant on a group's collaborative efforts and contributions. So in this transition, there's a lot of learning curve to it, and to have the efficiencies degrade for a period of time is relatively expected. It's sometimes described as a J curve. But even at our worst moments of that transition, we were still better than our peers and better than NASDAQ in our performance. As we began to establish a rhythm and a cadence within our group of making decisions, each individual down through this organization, many levels deep, are now capable of making very, very good decisions, and they have a very collaborative effort in doing so. That doesn't mean the decisions are group decisions. That means that they are very comfortable with referencing each other's opinions and utilizing that input to make their final decisions. And so we have seen our company accelerate in its efficiencies to where now we're achieving efficiencies at the highest level the company has ever achieved. We're achieving growth throughout. So from that, I want to skip back to page 54, where it describes the net income and the overall revenue. Let's see, did I go too far? Where'd my revenue page go? So our revenue in a very challenging year, 2020, was up 9.6%. Now, most of our peers in the commercial HVAC industry were down between 12 and 20%. So that's quite a delta between where our peers were and where we were in relation to 2019. And we've continued with the efficiency gains. Our gain in net profit, earnings per share, was on order of 50% year over year. Let's see here, earnings per share. It's on this page right here, 46%. 2020 the net earnings per share were up 46% versus 2019, and 2019 was up 28% versus 2018. So you can see in 2020 we made significant strides in the right direction and established a very consistent performing group at a very high level of performance. In 21, we've continued with the same efficiencies, although the revenue in quarter one was down, and this was intentional because coronavirus finally began to catch up with us in terms of order bookings. Order bookings in fourth quarter, which is essentially what we billed in the first quarter, were down considerably. And we had put all of our efforts together to try and accelerate that, and they didn't begin to manifest themselves until shortly after the first of the year. So that lag period, really about early November through the first week of January, gave us reason to slow down the production. Now, a lot of what we suffered for inefficiencies in 2017 and 18 were due to poor maintenance of our very fine automated sheet metal equipment. And we recognize that as part of our learning curve on how to improve our efficiencies. And so we have a much more demanding maintenance requirement now than what we did back in those earlier days. We took the opportunity to close the plant to everyone except maintenance and a few other kind of cleanup duties from Christmas through, I believe it was January 3rd. Maintenance came in here and were able to perform some major overhauls and major updating on the sheet metal equipment to make certain when the demand reappeared that we would be equipped for it. Because the one thing we wanted to make sure of was that we had reduced lead times to industry best lead times for our category of equipment, and we did not want to allow this to slip on us. And we certainly didn't want to do it because our equipment was not well maintained. So we took that opportunity and did a little proactive, get-ahead kind of maintenance. Then we had made the decision in early December that we would also close the plant on weekends in January. As many of you know, we work 7 days a week. Many of the factions of the company work 24 hours a day, but the assembly portion of the company essentially works 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we made the decision to shut down 2 days, the 2 weekend days, which straddled the crews. So both crews were shutting down the same amount of time because our changeover day was involved there. So the bottom line was, the first week of January, orders started flooding in the door. And we reassessed where we were at, but we had already given notice to these employees to shut down those weekends. We were able to get them to readjust their schedules and work the final weekends of January. So we only shut down the first 2 weekends, and then we resumed 7-day operation. While this was going to yield for us revenue and net profit in excess of our budget, number one, and number two, analyst expectations. We were going to easily surpass all of those metrics. And along came the snowstorm. And we had people couldn't get to work. We had intermittent power failures. And when you have computer-driven machinery and you shut the power off to it unexpected, rebooting that machinery takes a fair amount of time. And about the time we would get the machinery back up and online, the power would go off again. So we made the difficult decision to shut down both plants for a few days. It varied from Tulsa to Longview, but it was in the range of 3 days in one location and 4 in the other. So we lost 3 or 4 days, but when you add in that there was difficulty in the employees getting to work, we really lost probably more like 4 or 5 days of equivalent production days uninterrupted by this weather. Even with that, we exceeded our budget expectations on revenue by 5%. We exceeded our net profit expectations by 4%. Our gross profit, I mean. Our net profit we exceeded by 20%. So we were very, very efficient, even at this lower revenue dollar. We exceeded industry analyst expectations by as much as 4 cents per share. But I believe the consensus was we were maybe 2 cents better than consensus. Our revenue dollars were above consensus, and with the exception of one of the 3 analysts, we were well above their revenue expectations. One of them had us pinned within 300,000. We were 300,000 greater than one of the analysts. So I think that the analysts understand our business fairly well, and we're projecting a conservative outlook to them so that even with these unexpected interruptions, we were still able to meet their expectations. Bookings in the first quarter of 2020 were not affected by coronavirus to any degree that you could discern. Bookings in 2020 were very much on target with our expectations. We follow that with 2021 bookings being 22% greater than 2020 bookings. So the weakness in Q4 turned around substantially in Q1. A lot of these projects were put on hold or pause in 2020 for a variety of reasons, mostly related to the pandemic. Some of these were, they could not staff projects because of social distancing and things like that just weren't practical. Some of them, their government entities shut their states down. Pennsylvania was one of the earliest states to completely close the doors on construction. They said, go home. And they were the ones that came out most recently, so they were also lagged in coming back online. When these projects went on pause for this very unnatural occurrence, this was not an economic reason that these happened, this was an unnatural occurrence, there was still desire to complete these projects. Some of them were work in progress, some of them were about to start. We believe that somewhere post-election, that the decision was that, hey, we're getting coronavirus under control. We have vaccinations now. Right around the end of the year, we began to see vaccinations rolled out. I personally was vaccinated in January and February. So we began to see widespread vaccinations. We began to see projects go forward that had been on pause. And so I believe that the shortcomings in opportunity in 2020 were just extended into 2021. Most of those projects that we were made aware that were on pause for those various reasons have a schedule to be on go. And a lot of those are in our order book right now. We were up 22% for the first quarter over 2020. We continue to maintain good bookings cadence. It is not let up yet. The backlog, we had earnings announcements last week, so we updated the backlog figure at, I believe it was 105 or 107 million, so we maintained that level of backlog. Going back roughly 3 years ago, when our backlog swelled to this huge number, 168 million, many people were giddy about that. Myself, I was extraordinarily concerned about it. I knew this was problematic. That meant our lead times were out way beyond expectations. That meant that we were going to curb the momentum. If we had had the production capacity that we currently have, then that backlog might not have ever gone above 120 million. It would have been revenue that would have increased by that delta, that 40-something million. We now have production capability to stay in concert with demand. What we have analyzed is that our production facility is now capable of at least 20% greater production than the highest demand level that we've ever experienced. We continue to invest in production capacity. In 2021, we will have additional sheet metal machinery installed in this facility. We will update some machinery that the new machinery produces a higher number of parts per day than the existing, either due to technology or fresh legs on the new machinery. We're putting in approximately 12% more production capacity in this facility yet in 2021. In Longview, we recognized that the demand for the Longview product was much in excess of our production capabilities. We understood that Longview products were even more sensitive to lead time than Tulsa products. Yet, our facilities there had no spare room that could be repurposed for additional production capacity, and the arrangement of those buildings being built in a less than ideal manner over the years really constrained our efficiency in operations. So going back a little over 3 years ago, our planning process was to build a new facility for Longview. And that planning process was to design the manufacturing processes ideal and then design a building to wrap around that. And that's what we did. We began production in our new facility approximately 60 days ago. Now that is about 90 days behind schedule. The schedule was affected by 55 more rain delay days than normal. It was also affected by coronavirus. The project was shut down a couple of times because workers on site were found to be positive. So to complete that project only 90 days later than its original planning process, I think is very admirable. My hat's off to the team that did that. Many of you are sitting in the room now. I'm very proud of what you accomplished. That project will not show its true capabilities until at least the end of this year. We have the manufacturing facility completed, we have the equipment in place, but the staffing requirements require a lot of training, and we want to do that in a measured method. We don't want to just pour people in there and create more chaos and more inefficiencies. We understand how to measure these people in to get the most gain in output at the highest efficiency possible while in a very steep growth curve. So throughout 21, we look for improved revenue and improved efficiency in profit from the Longview operation. Now let's talk about the demand. Longview had never produced over $5 million in finished goods products in 1 month prior to Gene leading this operation. We brought Gene on 13 months ago. With the collaborative efforts of the Tulsa operations team and Gene's leadership, we have achieved $5,700,000 plus in monthly production, most recently from Longview. That's almost $1 million more. So that's 20-something% more in revenue than was ever achieved. And the new building was only a small contributor to that. But the demand seems to be in the range of $7 million a month. We have booked in excess of $7 million more than 1 month. And this is with lead times that are considerably longer than ideal for that product type. So as this new facility comes up to speed and we increase the production rates and the revenue rates, the lead time will begin to draw in, and we will see exactly how attractive that product line is. Our belief is that there's substantial growth opportunity in front of us, the key driver is we need to shorten the lead time. Now, we've also designed a program that we have named Mach 1. Mach 1 was a result of observing how this group put together all the information required to provide the New York City coronavirus units. 80 50-ton units. From the moment of first discussion until delivery of the final unit was 13 days. That was one of the most magnificent things to watch happen that you can ever imagine. I received a phone call on Sunday afternoon, March 29th, from our sales channel partners that are great personal friends, describing to me what they needed to help do this. I engaged our team Sunday afternoon. Tuesday afternoon, we had all the details worked out, and at 6:30 p.m. on that Tuesday afternoon, we got a go button. At 9:30 the next morning, the first unit came off the line. I watched how all this happened. I watched there was a group sitting almost exactly above me here in a conference room making all these decisions, pulling information from our computer system in order to make these qualified decisions of how to do that. And I looked at Ronnie and I said, I know you're brilliant. I know you can automate all of this. And he said, yes, sir. Thank you for the compliment. I believe we can. Well, he has. That has all been automated now. And that is called Mach 1. Mach 1 allows for a great deal of these decision-making things to be done in an automated format and compress our processing schedule. Our production control department keeps an available manufacturing capacity for Mach 1. We began this with our water source heat pumps. We've accomplished this. Our track record is very admirable on turning Mach 1 opportunities into shipped product on time. We commit to what that ship date is when they punch the button for Mach 1. And like I said, the track record is extraordinary. Our intentions are to extend that to the Longview products. Now, Ronnie's group has already completed all the software to make that happen. And Rob's group is testing that software to make sure that it meets those expectations. What we don't yet have is production capacity to have that bubble, as we call it, of available production capacity. We have to first meet the demand that's already in the house, and then we can gain that buffer zone or bubble. I believe that with Mach 1, we have only seen the earliest indicator of what the capability of sales for the Longview operation are. I believe we're going to be sitting here in 2, maybe 3 years at the very most, looking back at this and saying how monumental that investment was and that achievement was. I'm very confident in this team's plans. I'm very confident in them being able to achieve everything in those plans because they have track record. In 2020, backing up, they were 105% of all goals that they had set in 2019. Today, they are, as I already read to you, in excess of those goals that were set through that budgeting process. They have validated track record. They're the real deal. I'm very proud of the whole group. With that, I'll open it up to questions. Come on, Cruz, you got to have one. Huh?
You did such a great job of explaining everything. He grilled us before.
Yes, sir.
Just curious on the Longview plant about, I've been hearing a lot about copper shortages. Are you pretty well in good shape in that arena as far as raw materials? It does seem, obviously, it's a big deal for Longview.
It's a big deal for all raw materials for all the plants. I will say, Whitney's sitting here right now. She leads that effort. She has a great department. A lady named Dory Simmons leads the purchasing efforts. They keep a 6-month forecast in front of me, both in cost and quantities, and we have nothing to be alarmed about for the 6-month outlook. Now, they have told me it's not easy. It's not normal cadence of supply chain and purchasing. It's difficult, but we have a very admirable position with our suppliers. One of the key things that suppliers are keen on is consistency, consistent growth, and people that pay their bills, and we are all of that. We pay our bills early to take discounts when they're made available to us. This is one of the things that we do with our use of cash. So I don't want to tell you that it can't occur. I don't want to tell you that it's not of concern, but I will say that I'm confident that our group has a handle on it, and the outlook they've given me for the next 6 months is no reason to believe we can't meet all of our objectives. All right. So, Luke?
I entertain a motion to ratify number 5.
So I would entertain a motion to ratify the acts and actions of the Board of Directors and the officers of the corporation during 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So I see Grant Thornton, I see you're next on the list here for any comments or questions for you.
I have no specific comments, but I'm available for questions if anybody has any questions.
Okay. Appears there are no questions. All right. Has anyone got a desire for further voting, or has all voting been completed by everyone in the room?
Here, I have that.
You have one? Luke? Okay. All right. So all ballots have been collected. The polls are now closed?
They are.
Luke, would you announce the voting results, please?
Happy to. So first, I can confirm that a quorum is present. We have 94.04% of the total shares outstanding represented by proxy or in person. Also pleased to report that Norm Asbjornson, Gary Fields, and Angela Copeland have each been re-elected for 3-year terms on the Board of Directors, expiring at the 2024 annual meeting. Of the shares voted, Mr. Asbjornson received 96.61% for, 3.38% against. Mr. Fields received 99.11% for, 0.88% against, and Ms. Copeland received 98.1% for and 1.89% against. Also happy to report that the Say on Pay advisory resolution on the compensation of our named executive officers has been approved. Of the shares voted for that proposal, 96.28% voted for the resolution, with 3.71% voting against the resolution. And the last proposal, the appointment of Grant Thornton as the company's independent registered public accounting firm for 2020 has been ratified by a vote of 99.35% for and 0.64% against.
All right, thank you, Luke, for reading the results. Is there any further business? I call the meeting adjourned. Thank you for your attendance.
Great.